Hi, my name's Liz Vaudry, and I'll be talking about standpoint theory. Standpoint theory focuses on individuals from different groups within a hierarchy. Each group within a social standing will have their own set of standpoints based off of their unique life experiences. The theory also identifies the power one might have in a conversation due to their position within the social standing. Standpoint theory gives a feminist perspective that denies traditional science as objective. It suggests that research and theory has ignored and marginalized women and feminist ways of thinking. Standpoint theory uses the critical approach because it looks at who has the most power in a conversation and how to equalize it. It also looks at the fact that marginalized people have a better understanding of their social standing than those in privileged roles. Nancy Harstock, a prominent standpoint theorist, says, standpoint theory seeks to understand the influence that a particular location exerts on people's views of the world and their communication. Standpoint theory is ever evolving and is being used currently in several applications. One example is global public relations. In response to flourishing globalization, the need to tailor large-scale public relations programs is growing. Within these programs, the need to be attentive to Indigenous people is especially important. When moving into different areas of the world to set up new business and manufacturing, companies need to be cognizant of Indigenous people's needs. According to Lim, a researcher in public relations strategies, organizations should practice both globally integrated and locally responsive public relations. Another approach I found interesting is sexual orientation within college sports. In their paper, The Tipping Point, Nefertiti Walker and Nicole Milton focused on the fact that sports research on sexuality has primarily focused on white, lesbian, bisexual, and gay people. They found that there have only been a few studies that look at sexual prejudice within racial minorities. Through their research, Walker and Melton look at the discrimination happening on sports teams regarding race, sexual identity, and sexual orientation. They point out that several teams have adopted the don't ask, don't tell policy once used by the US military. Often within college sports, when players come out as gay or reveal their true sexual orientation, they're kicked off the team. This bias is even worse for Black and lesbian women. The number one complaint made against standpoint theory revolves around essentialism. Some speculate that the theory assumes every woman's experience is the same, lumping all females into the same category. If that wasn't bad enough, the viewpoints provided seem to come from the privileged white female's perspective, leaving those of color, different class, and sexual orientation out of the conversation. The second area of criticism is dualism. For example, people in Western society tend to think that decisions should be made rationally versus emotionally. Because of this, women are often seen as irrational. There's a concern that dualism brings about a false contrast between men and women, creating an either-or situation versus both and, leading to exclusion between the sexes. But for all the criticisms, standpoint theory has evolved many times since its evolution. Through the outsider within phenomenon, marginalized people can point to patterns of behavior that those in the upper ranks of society are unable to identify. This helps give a voice to the marginalized people, allowing them to change the status quo and better their situation. I think it would be interesting to see standpoint theory painted in a sociopsychology light. While reading about the theory, I often found myself wondering what the emotional repercussions might be of those in marginalized groups. Based on sexual orientation, race, and gender, I'd like to know how these groups are coping on a broader scale. Another way to use the application would be in an organizational setting, using this theory to help those within business understand the fundamental differences between men and women may help women achieve equality within the higher ranks of management. Standpoint theory is a great tool used by many researchers to understand the views of marginalized people. Through different levels of investigation, theorists have been able to identify standpoints within certain cultural situations. People are now starting to use standpoint theory to help derail bias in sports, politics, business, and so on. It's ever evolving and has proven to be a very useful tool for many. Depending on where we come from and what our experiences are, we see things completely different from others around us. But we can learn to see life from someone else's standpoint if we try. We may never truly understand what someone has been through physically and emotionally, but if we can recognize and come to terms with our own standpoints, the better equipped we are to relate to others.